Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. If you're loving what you're hearing on the podcast, go out and tell 2 friends today. Show them how easy it is to subscribe to the show. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you're sure to find the Real Estate Espresso Podcast. In fact, if you're loving what you're hearing on the show, I would love it if you went into iTunes or Apple Podcasts and left a review. Reviews tell Apple to raise the Real Estate Espresso Podcast in the search rankings. Why keep all this goodness to yourself? Spread the love around. On today's show, we're talking about one of the drivers for new housing. I was speaking with an appraiser earlier this week, and that conversation led to an insight that you will rarely stumble across in the news. It seems that 2020 has been a difficult year in more ways than one. We know it's been a difficult year in the healthcare sector. We know it's been a difficult year economically. And we've heard that 2020 has been difficult from a mental health perspective. My wife runs a clinical family therapy practice with a number of practitioners in her office. And I can tell you that most of the therapists have a pretty full caseload. But 2020 has also been difficult on relationships. Contrary to popular urban legends, we've seen consumption of alcohol actually decrease by 8% compared with 2019. That's probably because all the bars and restaurants are closed. But here's another insight. Many couples are spending extended periods of time together in tight quarters with no breaks from each other. And the appraisers have seen a massive increase in volume for appraisals for homes that are not actually being sold. These are cases where a couple is splitting up, and the separation process requires a valuation for the matrimonial home. Some of these houses might end up on the market for sale, but a lot will not. Division of households for divorce is increasing demand for rental housing. There may not be a large supply of rental housing in some areas. Bedroom communities are often designed around residential subdivisions of single-family homes. You don't typically find rental housing in these same neighborhoods. In some cases, a member of a couple is forced to find housing many miles from the original family home. This is often in a different school district, making it complicated for families looking to minimize disruption to children who might still be at school. When a family separates, there's a need for a larger rental property so that each child has a bedroom, even though they might occupy that bedroom only part-time. Now, if no children are involved, then the person moving out is probably looking for a one-bedroom apartment. I've seen new construction rental buildings being built in areas that traditionally I would not have considered to be candidates for rental housing. They're far from public transit, they're deep in a residential area. I would have predicted that those buildings would have performed poorly in those locations. Fast forward a year later, and those buildings are full and renting at strong rental rates. I was wrong. What's the reason? Well, you guessed it. Families that are split need a second rental residence nearby. Now, there's a natural seasonal cycle for housing. We know from past history that the busiest moving days of the year are July 1st and August 1st. You would not expect people to be moving in February, but some do, and it's often because a couple is splitting apart. If you want to get a unique insight into what's happening in your local market, have a conversation with an appraiser and ask them about the valuation work they're doing for properties that are not selling. These properties are not going to be listed for sale anytime soon. We're going into a second wave of the pandemic right now. There's going to be healthcare stress, economic stress, and yes, marital stress. And if you have a product that meets the needs of this segment of the market, you can market to that specific client. The needs of that client might be different than your average tenant. You could, for example, in your listing, show which school bus routes are serviced near your property. Real estate's like any other business. It follows the laws of supply and demand, and this is one area of demand that's often not talked about. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.